Hello, hello. Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Dose of Desi. Today is March 19th, 2022, and it is officially the seventh episode of our podcast. Lucky number seven. Beautiful day today. I really enjoyed the weather. Spent some time outside, which was a lot of fun. And I hope all of you watching are also having a fantastic weekend. How are you doing, Udit?
Doing well, thanks. Yeah, I agree with you. It was a really nice day here in the DC metro area today. I was like in the 70s. I had some Baskin Robbins, met up with my sister. It was nice, had some family time or whatever. Um, so yeah, just bring it back to the podcast. We don't have any special guests lined up this week, but we are excited to have a conversation about a topic that we both feel strongly about in various ways, and that is technology. So before we get started, just a reminder to please feel free to share your thoughts, comments, and questions in the chat box throughout the podcast.
Absolutely. Well, let's just jump right in. So, to start the conversation about tech, we wanted to really frame this first in how does technology affect us both positively and negatively, just to get an overall feel of our sort of relationship with technology, so to speak. Um, so I'll start a little bit, and then we'll kind of go back and forth on this a little. But I think in many ways, technology is incorporated into so much of what I do. I mean, I also work remote, so I mean, all day long, I'm utilizing technology to do a lot of what I have to do for work purposes at home. I have a lot of technology integrated into my life. I really enjoy technology and the benefits and things that it can provide. However, I do also recognize the sometimes the challenges that technology can also bring, in that, like, on a surface level, sometimes the reliance on technology, and when things don't work, you kind of scramble and have to. Sometimes people become too reliant upon technology, right? And forget how to live without it. But then also, in some ways, it can be a distraction sometimes too. So um, that's kind of some ways that it has impacted me a little bit. I don't know if you have any initial thoughts, and then we can kind of dive into more detail.
Yeah. I was actually going to expand. I was going to ask you to expand on those thoughts. I can share a few of my thoughts, but you said like there's pros and cons, or positives and negatives. I absolutely agree. I also work remote most of the time. I think technology is great and all, and I think it makes our lives easier, but I think it also makes us dependent on it, which is where differentiating between a healthy relationship with technology and an unhealthy relationship with technology. And that's something I think most people, at least in the US and and the developed world, and even in developing countries where they're much more becoming dependent on technologies. Like, for example, in parts of Africa, in the Caribbean, in China, they're starting to embrace digital currencies, and that's bringing up a whole other. We can talk about that a little later, but that's bringing up a whole bunch of questions as to how much privacy there is, how much there isn't, control, and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of, going back to what you were saying in terms of like the positive and negatives, I think I've had this like off and on love hate kind of thing with technology myself. I know I've been to your house, and your house like has like all sorts of tech upgrades that like I was like, okay, well, that's impressive. So, like you're like, the one thing I remember is like your light switches, right? You just got those upgraded. And on the one hand, I'm like, okay, this is really cool. He's got like pictures, popping up on this little tiny screen and everything. But on the other hand, I'm like, what happens if there's like a electronic like surge or something? And then would you, like, I don't know, would you be able to bring
So
your systems back up after
it's
that? Like
it's funny that
how
you say
depend
that. Yeah,
You
it's
know,
funny
like,
that you say that because
yeah,
I mean, yeah, to that point, right? Like, so these are these like little light switches, as you said, that they make it smart. So your regular bulbs become smart. And I have a lot of
right,
smart, everything's smart. My family
right.
kind of makes fun of me a little for that, but I mean, so for me, I love the ease of use, the convenience that technology brings with it. We can control our lights, with our voices now. If we're upstairs, we can check if they're on or off. There's that benefit, that convenience. But to your point, that light switch is actually acting up and not turning on right now. So those lights behind me are off. So in that
And
case, now it's kind of an inconvenience when it doesn't work.
and
So
and that's
there's
sorry,
pros
I
and
have to
cons.
add, and that's where like simplicity, I still believe in simple technologies. Like technically, you know, I don't know, trying to think of a simple technology. There are many simple technologies around us, right? Like manual things that we take for granted, like a thing of like pliers. I know that's technically a technology too. It's just we've come beyond that in the last, several decades or whatever, that now we think of technology more, initially our thoughts go straight to, oh, it has to be electronic, it has to be this, that, and the other. At least that's how we think about it. So I think I still have an appreciation for simple technologies, maybe manual switches, if I can throw that out there. Because
Yeah.
like you said, when it comes to these touch switches and all of that, they're great hypothetically, but in emergency situations and other situations, it's the simplicity that kind of
Yeah, and I,
thrive.
I think I think this is where you and I both have a mutual respect for technology, but I think we kind of differ a little in that sense of, even though there are issues with it sometimes or it doesn't always work the way you want, I still tend to err on the side of still going for it anyways and trying to make it work and trying to like really automate and do everything that I can to incorporate tech into different ways. So I do kind of um, tend to really just try and utilize tech whenever I can. Even for simple things, it's just, I don't know. So, for me, part of it is just I feel like there's in a weird way, a sense of accomplishment sometimes when I can set stuff up and it works in a different way, because I don't have that same skill set in other areas. And so with tech, it's like, oh, cool, I did this myself and I set this up, and it's just a constantly evolving field. So there's always new things and it kind of keeps it fresh as well. But to that point, it also becomes hard to keep up.
But
As technology evolves, you have to update things and things go out of date pretty quickly. So that also becomes a challenge.
but like on a deeper level, and yeah, I hear what you're saying, but on a deeper level, you have to ask, what is it evolving towards, right? um, like, yeah, sure, now you can open doors with your voice and stuff, but let's keep in mind technology can be hacked, right? So can a manual door be hacked? Sure, you have to be physically present for that. Whereas in the electronic world, some hacks can be done remotely, right? I don't know. Does that make it? Does that make it like it? I wonder. A lot of technology is promoted with the sense of safety in mind. And that's something I often question, is how safe is it actually making us? Is it because, it's tied to a service, or it's tied to this, or it's tied to that, that we have the illusion of safety? Or I don't know. Just that question comes to mind. Um,
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought.
Yeah. I mean, I think along those lines, right? Like, you know, in order to adopt some of this technology, it is kind of judging that level of comfort with privacy and safety, right? With utilizing it. I think, different people have different levels of comfort with that. I think in some ways it also depends on the tech, right? Because when you think tech, there's also tech advancements in healthcare and in other areas, and it's um
That's right.
and so yeah, there's definitely privacy and security, things that need to be addressed, but in some ways there's a lot of tech, like in a lot of hospitals, they have these robots that can, operate on people. And so you have surgeons that may be across the world that can remotely operate on somebody and get the care, delivered to someone that they need, when they wouldn't be able to physically get there, as quickly. So that's one way that technology can be used positively.
I think that's also happening because there's a shortage of humans in some areas and fields, right? Supposedly, with like the pandemic happening, human beings tend to get tend to be biological, so they get sick, whereas robots don't. So there's pros and cons there, but then robots can't empathize with their patients. They can say nice things, but they can't, they can check your vitals or whatever, but they can't like comfort you when you're emotionally distressed to a degree, I suppose. But
I don't think robots, like in that case, I don't think they're well, again, every field is different, but I don't think they're necessarily a replacement for that. But to that point of, there's also things that robots can do that humans can't do as efficiently. So for example, the robot I'm referring to, the Da Vinci, it can literally take, I saw a video where they would peel the layers off of a grape, like just super precisely, and you have a human, and if their hand shakes a little or something.
Is that a surgical robot, I'm guessing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I mean, sure. Have you watched the movie Prometheus?
I have.
You remember there, like in one of the scenes, she's got like an alien like attached to her and like or in her belly or something, and she's like pregnant with it, and it's like gonna come out, and she has to like surgically remove it, and she like thrusts herself into this machine where like she like programs the machine real quick. I vaguely remember because it's been a while, but like that's what comes to mind is and like she like sutures herself up, or the machine helps her or whatever, and then she gets rid of it and like runs out. So I don't know if that's where we're headed, but I think certainly in space travel it'll come in very, very handy. Not to get all like sci-fi nerd on you all of a sudden, but so it's got its pros and cons. I think it's just a matter of using technology responsibly, right? Like everything is a tool. A hammer is a tool. You can use it to build something, or you can hurt someone. Hopefully you'll use it to build something and not hurt someone, right? So I don't know. Like I said, I stand on that boundary, sometimes called a fence sitter, of using too much technology versus basically about like
there are definitely like categories of folks, and I'm tend to be on that the early adopter category of tech.
I know
it makes it interesting, when we talk about these things, for sure.
Yeah, so that begs the question, and actually, really quick before I ask you this question, I want to give a shout out to Joel. I think he had typed something in. Oh yeah, there he is. He actually just said robots are slowly replacing human jobs to an extent. But yeah, it's crazy. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, they are.
Have you seen, so real quick, speaking of robots, the Boston Dynamics, like that robot dog, that thing, I gotta say, in some way it's impressive, but also kind of freaky, just the way that it like moves. It's like, it's so eerily like human-like in its movements, or the way that it can navigate things, which is, it's that is also like, I appreciate that, but that's also kind of getting to the point, because they have the dog, but then they have these ones that also stand up, and there's a video I saw of them like dancing and like doing flips.
I know what you're talking about,
and it was pretty crazy.
Isn't the dog one called Dot or something?
Oh, that I don't.
I'll have to look it up now. Boston Dynamics, it's a little, and I think Spot, it's not Dot, it's Spot. That's what it is.
There we go.
That was close. And then they have another one, but basically the applications are for repetitive things, and which honestly, like, I can see how it would free up humans to get more creative. I don't know if that's going to lead to people being lazy or not, but it certainly frees us up from repetitive tasks, which I think most humans don't like doing. People do it. People have jobs where they, that are repetitive, but they don't necessarily make a lot of income or give a lot of satisfaction. So I think that's good in a way, but then it's removing jobs, and I don't know.
Are we all going to be like in Wall-E, like the humans in the future where they're like rolling around in those chairs, the whole I don't know if you remember that as well.
I remember that. I hope not.
Yeah,
I hope not. I hope we don't
hopefully not
go around in floaty chairs and still use our legs. But Joel is saying, I've seen an IHOP robot waiter. I read not too long ago that Domino's Pizza is testing a robot car, that thing delivering pizza. Yeah, that's another thing. Self-driving cars are becoming. Yeah, when I was in San Francisco, I think back in February, was it February? I think it was February. I remember seeing a Waymo car that was like doing, had the LiDAR thing on top of it, and it was mapping when I was with my family. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, this is how they, update the Waymo maps or the Google Maps or whatever. So that was interesting. But I think using LiDAR, the car was also teaching itself to navigate through the streets, because it was rigged for that. I mean, I don't know. It had a bunch of cameras and other equipment there. But I think a human was sitting there. So that's good, I guess, for now. But no, I haven't heard of IHOP robot waiters. And I know in terms of like pizza too, like, some of the pizza shops, instead of using humans, are considering experimenting with like robotic pizza makers.
Some college campuses have delivery machines. Actually, the one local,
George Mason.
George Mason has delivery robots.
Yeah, I saw that in the news like a couple of years ago, and somebody's remotely controlling it and all that. So anyway,
and shout out to Munib as well, who says, I don't mind self-checkout, LOL. I guess, in a way, actually, that's an example of technology replacing some, you don't have as many folks at the cash registers working anymore there. And a lot of places have, maybe one person manning multiple checkout lines. And so that's an example of technology, starting to come in.
The technological takeover, right? Have you heard of the term the fourth industrial revolution? That's something that's been around a lot. There's Web3 with cryptocurrencies. There's Web3 with NFTs, which I know you absolutely dislike, and I'm sure we'll hear about that later. There's virtual worlds and all sorts of stuff like that. But I think let's transition our conversation from just the positive pros and cons of technology into specific types of technology. And we have 3 lined up for today. The first one is wearables. And I just want to, I pulled up a little definition of what is wearable technology on Investopedia, and I just want to read that really quick. It says, wearable technology, also known as wearables, is a category of electronic devices that can be worn as accessories, embedded in clothing, implanted in the user's body, or even tattooed on the skin. The device are hands-free gadgets with practical uses, powered by microprocessors and enhanced with the ability to send and receive data via the internet. There's more there, but Hassan, any thoughts so far on that?
So I think, there's different levels of wearables, as you described, sort of internal, external. A lot of the times when I think wearables, most of the applications to me come to mind in the healthcare space, both as people have external fitness trackers or things like an Apple Watch that also does fitness tracking, or, and other smartwatches and stuff, right? But then also you do have like devices like glucometers and other health devices that in some ways can either check your sugar readings and will prick you or something. So it's an external device, but it gets some measurements there.
These watches too, they measure like everything. I mean, this is a Samsung watch. I know you have Apple watches and whatnot, but they measure everything. I mean, you can get heart rate off of them. They're like EKGs, right? There's blood glucose monitors, and like you said, most recently the one I don't want to get into personal details of it, but most recently I used a heart monitor. Essentially, like put it on your chest close to your heart, and it monitors your heartbeat to detect, if there are any irregularities with your heartbeat. And then, you send it to a lab or to a doctor's office or whatever. But I personally am okay if it's external, like outside the skin. But I think I have, in terms of like health, electronic and digital, like wearables and whatnot, I have an issue so far with anything that's implanted, because that's more permanent. And I don't know, maybe I know you're like an early adopter for everything. I don't know if you're gonna like become cyborg or whatever soon.
No, I mean, I think like, for me, that internal kind of application, I think there's some cool use cases for folks that maybe have gotten like seriously injured or lost a limb or something like that. There's some really cool advancements in tech where they can, attach on this robotic arm that can allow them to do a lot of,
Right.
functions that they might have lost, things like that. So I think in some of those sort of more extreme cases, there's some cool use cases. But as far as other general use, for me, I'm kind of in the same boat at the moment. Of I think as I realize with a lot of the other tech that I am an early adopter of, I realize that sometimes there's flaws in it, or as the case of the smart switches, they're not always working. So when it's internal, you may run into more issues if things don't work, right? And what happens, and beyond that, many other security, privacy, things. So I'm kind of in the same comfort level. I think there's definitely some interesting use cases that almost bridge the gap a little. I know there's something that's called like the wearable skin. It's like a patch almost that you can kind of almost like a little temporary tattoo that you can put on your skin. And then after like a week, it sort of will dissolve itself, right? But you can, while it's there, it's getting a lot of, readings and things that could be interesting. So stuff like that,
That was
I think is a cool use case.
that
But
was kind of like the heart monitor that I was talking about. It didn't dissolve, like, you still have to like pry it off, but basically
right.
you wear it, you can, it's waterproof, you can shower with it, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's, I don't know. One other thing that comes to mind in terms of wearables, and this is like outside of, your watch, your, what have you, like tattooed stuff or like implanted in the user's body, embedded in clothing. Clothing is one that's actually pretty interesting. I know there are clothes for babies, for example, to monitor their temperature now, right? Is
Yeah,
that
we
something you
have a
know about?
little, there's a thing that's like a smart sock. So you
Right.
charge it up, but then you put it, as like a sock basically. And so my son Reese would wear it to bed, and it would alert us of like his oxygen levels and heart rate and stuff. So if it ever, and thankfully it never did, but it would like beep and sound an alarm and turn red in our room where the base is if something like happened. And so that actually gave us good peace of mind, because he would also love to sleep with his like face down, and that's always not a great thing sometimes at a young age. So like things like that are available pretty widely now, which is
But
interesting.
so two things come to mind. One is, just keep this in mind, but I'll move on quickly. But if you can bring me back, because I can't keep my thoughts together. One is, how much of this technology do we actually need? We talk about it as something cool, and it is cool. It is interesting. It's creative that we've gotten this far and we can build things like this. But where do we end simplicity and begin complexity in terms of this? And where do we say, okay, we need to be minimalists in this way and embrace technology in this way? That's one question that comes to mind. The other thing I wanted to mention, and we can come back to that question. The other thing I wanted to mention is, have you ever seen the lots of movies are coming to mind right now all of a sudden. Have you ever seen the movie The Edge of Tomorrow? Tom Cruise movie with Emily Blunt?
I think I don't remember if I watched all of it, but I definitely watched a good chunk of it. Yeah.
I really like that movie. It's, I don't know, it's just trippy, and I like it. It's one of those like few Tom Cruise movies I like. But essentially, they have a wearable in the movie, which I know now has become to a degree a reality. It's an exoskeleton suit that you can wear. It's, the whole thing is a suit. It's almost like an Iron Man type of suit, but it's very early prototype or whatever. Essentially, you wear the suit, it's made of metal or whatever, and it increases your strength and your ability to be able to lift heavy objects, for example, to be able to, I'm sure there's military applications for it that are probably being explored in top secret places somewhere. But yeah, but in terms of civilian, like day-to-day stuff, there's for heavy lifting, for repetitive tasks, again, like if you don't have those Boston Dynamic robots, or maybe you can't use robots in some setting, you can have people who wear those suits and they unload heavy crates or heavy objects with ease. So
Yeah. So I think real quick, just to kind of answer some of what you're saying, or bring some discussion of that as well, and then we'll
yeah. Also, is that who I think it is? Is that your wife?
Yes. Shout out to my wife Maheen, who's in the chat.
Hey Maheen.
What's up, Maheen? But yeah, so I think, like, for me, I think it's when technology can help to improve outcomes in different ways. And again, it can be argued that, like, we were fine without it in the past, right? And people got by with it, right? But you have things like, for example, the smart sock, right? Like, there's a lot of babies would die from SIDS at a young age of sudden, infant death syndrome, and so this allows people to kind of monitor things. Now, in most cases, hopefully, people would be fine without it. But if it can save even one life, is it worth it or is it not? Right? There's a balance. I think in general, technology's evolved over the years. So I think the human lifespan, right, it over the years has in general increased, and people tend to live longer. Now, the flip side is that also, from a healthcare perspective, it also brought a lot of additional challenges, because as people live longer, they get more complex, diseases and conditions, as we weren't maybe meant to live as long, and then that brings a whole other set of problems. But so there's always consequences to this stuff too. So I think, in many ways, over time, technology has helped to improve outcomes, but also has there's additional challenges and things that have arisen.
Agreed. I feel like that's where, like, again, in my head, you're saying people are maybe not meant to live as long. It brings the whole argument of nature versus technology. Like, this would be a conversation for another time, because I like, that's gonna get real deep if I get into that, and I don't want to get into it, and get deep and then just be like, okay, we have to stop now. So, but it looks like we have another comment in the chat box. Maheen is saying, or said, I wonder if there's a limitation in that robots don't have a sense of humanity. For example, say robot surgeons, a human is going to do whatever they can to keep the person alive if things go south. That's essentially what I had touched on a little bit briefly. So it's nice to see that, she's also questioning, Maheen, you're also wondering and questioning about those things. And obviously the robots will be able to implement life-saving techniques if the need be, which Hassan was mentioning, like the precision of the Da Vinci robot, for example, right?
I think, there's definitely that fine line, or that balance of replacing what is already there versus assisting, or kind of, being an enhancement to something that's existing. And there's a line in every field or every type of tech. That's something that has to be kind of judged.
Right. So, okay, quick question. And actually, I want to keep an eye on the chat as well, but I also want to keep the conversation going. So quick question, and then we can wrap up the wearables part and move on to the next one. If you had like, how do I say this? If you could enhance your body, and by enhance, I mean through technological means, there's something called Neuralink, right? Which is an implantable microchip that Elon Musk's, it's a company that Elon Musk has, Neuralink. They're essentially right now experimenting with animals, and they, hope to move eventually to humans, implanting a chip into the human brain by drilling a very fine hole with like a special drill bit or something. or like even tattooing, something on your skin. I know during the pandemic, one of the things that I saw online on Instagram was some people literally tattooed a QR code of their vaccine card, and they're like, I don't want to have to carry this around, and then they just tattooed it on there. They would go to a restaurant or whatever, they would scan that, and they'd be like, okay, yeah, you're good, go ahead. What do you think about that? Is that, to what degree are you, Hassan, okay with wearable technology, and where would you stop if you had to, would you, because you're an early adopter and a fan of technology, would you go all the way, or?
No, I mean, I think when it comes to like wearables, I think again, there's that internal versus external conversation of things that are external, like a watch, a tracker, or certain health devices, things like that. Yeah, I'm all on board. Would love to try out and experiment. When you talk about something internal, that becomes a bit more permanent, a bit more serious, and I'm very skeptical of that at the moment, especially the Neuralink and all that. In some ways, I am an early adopter, but also, for example, like when it comes to Teslas and electric cars and all that, I'm also still very hesitant and skeptical. And in some ways, I think the technology can improve, and then I'll look into it and explore from other avenues. But I would not.
I mean, even when I was like looking it up a while back, and I haven't looked into it, how much progress they've made recently, but it was talking about how you can tweet and do social media with a thought. I'm like, do I really want to? Like, I already don't want to,
I think for me, like a lot of the so-called enhancements that can come, you don't need to put something internal. Like if you want to have, like people envision like, oh, all of a sudden you have this whole UI that you can view, and like things pop up, and like, oh, all of a sudden I can see the weather right here. This, like it gives you all this like embedded tech in your mind or whatever, right? You can do that without having to stick something in your body, right? As another level of a wearable, which is kind of related to the next sort of topic as well, is VR and AR, right? So virtual reality, augmented reality. So there's ways to get some of those cool, interesting use cases without having to affect your body at all. And that's kind of what I'm more interested in exploring versus something, inside.
Okay. And I mean, the wearables, there's also fitness and all that. There's tons to it. So I think maybe we'll have to dig into, eyeglasses too. There's tons of eyeglasses now that.
Yeah.
Google,
so actually, I meant to
Google Glass, by the way. I have to ask. Anyway.
I think Google Glass, from my understanding, was like, it was a concept project they used, but it never like morphed into like a consumer product. But actually, I meant to bring this. I know we talked about maybe me bringing something. I left it upstairs, but so Facebook has the Ray-Bans smart glasses. In that case, actually,
you have those.
So I do. My cousin actually was the lead on that project at Facebook, which is interesting. But I did want to get it and try it out. And
he sent some to you, or are you like?
No. I did a review for YouTube, or actually I haven't posted it yet, but I filmed a review. But for me, the idea of that was like a point of view camera for kind of interesting home videos or interesting use cases, things like that. But yeah, right, it does bring the concerns about privacy and stuff if people can have easily accessible cameras. I think there's some ways to kind of bridge the gap. Like this camera, there's no way to mute it, right? Like, so every time it takes a picture, it has to make an audible sound and the light is on. Now, can people hack that and mess with it? I mean, these are all questions that I'm sure will come up, but another example of kind of that fine line there.
So do you have those glasses? I don't know. Were you gonna like demonstrate them or anything?
Oh, I don't know how. I guess I could show them, but I can run up and grab them later maybe or something, just to kind of show as part.
Sure, yeah, I thought you were gonna like show us something. That's why I was asking. But
yeah, I meant to, and I forgot. They're actually upstairs.
You can ask Mahi to run up and bring them to you real quick.
Yeah, Maheen, if you're watching, they're in the kitchen by the phone. There's like a glasses thing. Just let me know if you can bring them and just knock on the
No
door if you
pressure, right?
can. If not, then we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, so with that, should we also, I know there are multiple comments in the chat. Do you want to address those and then move on to our next technology topic?
Yeah, I guess real quick, we'll just read maybe one of the more recent, things about
Sure.
like what Maheen's talking about, there's all these potential controversial ways that things could be used or not, but she's saying for glasses, like, um, she says, I think, and I don't agree with it, but I kind of wonder if we'll reach a point where people like cops or these glasses or sunglasses that use facial recognition to look up a person's criminal background if they have one, right? So
Oh,
that, I
wait,
mean,
do they do that? I know
I
some in some states and some like counties and whatnot, they have to wear a body cam. After a lot of the protests and all the things that have happened with the last 2-3 years with cops and people like George Floyd who have died, and there have been a lot of controversy about technology and surveillance too, to some degree. So I don't want to get too much into that because that's a different topic and it's more political in nature. But yeah, I know some cops do wear body cams, but I didn't know that
right.
they had the
No,
capability
I don't.
to.
I think what she's saying is the potential for this type of
Okay.
tech as it becomes more accessible, right? You just have glasses that have cameras. Like she's talking about how, the good and bad of how things could be used. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm laughing at
Um
the comments.
but yeah, let's jump into the next topic because it is sort of related to where we're headed. We're talking about virtual reality, augmented reality. Um so the next piece is about the metaverse. And real quick, wanted to talk about what that even means. And then we'll get into some poll questions that we actually put out as well.
Do you have it up
Um,
or do you want me to read it?
the definition,
Yeah,
you
or
can go
just
ahead and read it. Yeah.
okay. So let's see. I don't know what this website is, Gartner.com, but it says the metaverse is a collective virtual open space created by the convergence of virtually enhanced physical and digital reality. It is physically persistent and provides enhanced immersive experiences. That's a pretty wild definition out there. Um, let's see. I'm going to read something else here. Okay, Wikipedia says a metaverse is a network of 3D virtual worlds focused on social connection. In futurism and science fiction, it is often described as a hypothetical iteration of the internet as a single universal virtual world that is facilitated by the use of virtual and augmented reality, so VR and AR, which we're going to talk about. And then it talks about the origins of the term, the metaverse, and how it came from a science fiction novel.
Yeah.
The
So
Matrix.
interesting. Like, yeah, I mean, is that kind of really what it like? We took the Matrix as like a virtual world that people plug into in a way, and I mean that's kind of what this is. This is some type of a virtual space where you can interact with other people in different ways. And right now the lens by which we do it is virtual reality, augmented reality, but um very broad concept. I think a lot of folks are exploring this in different ways, and everybody's saying we're doing the metaverse, but it means different things, when they all kind of say it because it's still being defined. But
Well,
yeah,
go
what?
ahead.
Go ahead.
I don't want to
No, I
interrupt.
was gonna say what I was actually just gonna ask you. What are your thoughts um, on that concept and the metaverse?
Well, one thing I want to mention, I know you said everybody's jumping into it. My concern is, Facebook, Google, Apple, they have a ton of other privacy concerns that, they haven't figured out yet. And here they are talking about jumping into metaverses and all this stuff. So that's a kind of a concern right there, right? Because if you haven't, like in some ways, if people haven't felt safe and like private to a degree with your current products that are not in the metaverse, how do you think that's going to translate into the metaverse? Just a thought. But again, they all make great products too. It's just the whole privacy concern. In terms of the metaverse, what do I think of it? I know the definition that I read said social connection. Isn't that was a part of it, right? And
Yeah,
I
I think
think
that's one of the reasons people want to use it is when you're in this virtual space and interacting with other people, one of the avenues is having, trying to, connect with people socially through that.
right, and I think I am of two opinions about that. One, it can be very, again, I go back to my space application use. It can be very useful when it comes to bridging long distances in some ways, but it can be very harmful if used on a day-to-day basis. Like right now we have a epidemic of people addicted. I'm guilty too, by the way. Addicted to their mobile phones or their iPads or whatever. Including young people, kids, and whatnot. Um, yeah, it opens up a whole world and you can look up information or whatever, but then I feel personally that you lose that sense of social connection with humans, because face to face, biological being to biological being, there are chemical reactions that occur when a person's sitting across from you, whereas those things don't necessarily occur when you're staring at a screen, or they do. Maybe there's dopamine release. You can talk about psychology anytime that comes up, but they're not the same as healthy human interactions. And I wonder if that's stunting human connection in some way. That's my concern with that. But in terms of long distances, in terms of the metaverse, I think another thing is a lot of us already escape. We work hard and all that, and then we escape into our little, digital worlds. We watch movies or we sit, with our iPad or whatever. I think if the metaverse is used in that way, where like the movie Ready Player One, you remember that movie?
Yeah.
Where like the world has become terrible, and everybody's escapes into a digital reality. It's essentially the metaverse. I hope we never get to that point where like we just ignore what we have and move, because reality is so much of a drag that we just escape into the matrix of sorts. So that's what I wonder. Again, I don't know how much the metaverse is needed. I think when it comes to specific fields like healthcare, it can be beneficial, but I think when it comes to other fields like like gaming or like something else, I think it can be harmful if not used wisely. And I think I don't think that's a question that tech companies or people often ask. And I'll end my rant shortly, but I don't think that's a question that people often ask when these new technologies emerge. Only after years of applications, they're like, wait, you're leaving?
I'm here. Sorry, I'm listening. I'm here.
Only after. Yeah, no, I'm glad you got the glasses. Thank you, Maheen. Only after years of application, of using these technologies, do people realize, oh my God, I'm depressed because I'm on an iPad day in and day out, or oh my God, I'm sitting in, that's kind of been my realization.
Yeah. So I think real quick, I'll kind of give my thoughts, and then I'll jump into.
Sorry, I went off on a little rant there.
No. That was great. I think the interesting thing. So I differ to some extent, but I think the larger picture, I think I agree of the metaverse. I'm still very skeptical and not super interested in at this point. But I think like in terms of the one of the reasons being that kind of that social connection or that online connection that people want from other people. I actually love the use of technology to connect with people. I use Twitter all the time. I'm like connected with people through that way. I have so many friends that I've made through connecting online. Actually, aside from you and a handful of other folks, I mean, most of my other good friends are all I've met online and communicate with them online. I just don't currently at least see the additional benefit of right now I can chat with people or we can get on a call or do different things. I just don't see how physically in this virtual environment, what that does any differently in the metaverse to make it any more of a connection to people. I mean, I think we're just not there yet with technology in that way. And I'm not really looking for that necessarily. I think for me, it's I make the connections, but then I crave the ability to meet up with those people in person then, right? And when I do meet them in person, which I have sometimes met online friends in person, it's always amazing, right? Because it's finally, you have that additional level of connection that you could not get digitally. It's just not possible, right? When you see somebody face to face, you see their mannerisms and all that. So I love the social aspect and I love that ability, but I just am not sold on how the metaverse is going to make any of that more interesting or better or going to help in any way in that regard. But we can jump into some other stuff real quick, courtesy of my wife. I have the Ray-Ban. So these are the little product demo. So the cameras are both right here.
They look kind of goofy. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, the frame options, for what they had are not the best. I will say, or at least for me, I keep things more minimalistic if I wear anything, and these are pretty thick, the frames. But the cameras are there. There's like lights if this thing was on as well. But these are,
So okay, you have two cameras on the side, right? Okay,
yes.
I see them. And what? You charge it up and it records everything and that's it, or is there more?
Well, so it can only record small clips or take pictures. So you can push a little button here or use voice commands to do that. But it also can play. I think you can play music as well. So if you want to wear it like a speaker or take calls, I believe it can do that as well. I haven't used it for any of those things, but
so like it plugs into your like wirelessly like through
Bluetooth. Yeah. So it's like a Bluetooth headset, but on your face like that. So for me, the interesting use case was like, I'd be holding my son and doing stuff, and without me having to take out my phone, which then he wants my phone or something, I was like here and I was like, holding him and like using voice commands or pushing the button, and I got some really cool like point of view shots and stuff. Just something to play around with. I gotta use it some more, but if everybody's walking around with these, I think that would be a very interesting world. But tech is.
That would be a major privacy concern right there. Like if it's constantly connected to Facebook servers or whatever servers, who knows when it's active and when it's not active, right? Unless you like find a way to install one of those covers on your little glasses, that covers up the camera or something. I'm
my wife is roasting me in the chat too. So clearly these are not super,
they're goofy looking, dude. They're super goofy looking. Yeah. They really need to work on that design. Maybe like partner up with, I don't know, Gucci or Armani or something.
Well, so it's a partnership with Ray-Ban, so so it's supposed to be.
They couldn't come up with a Ray-Ban's got great great sunglasses and stuff too, like aviators and whatnot.
Sorry to my cousin as well, but it is what it is.
No, it's cool, and I'm not trying to like roast your cousin. Hey, I haven't.
No, I'm with you.
I haven't created a product before, obviously, so what do I know? So props to him for actually, getting that
to her
done. It's just the design part that I'm like, okay, goofy looking.
So let's in terms of Metaverse, do you want to discuss the Twitter results? Because we put the question out there to people to hear what you all had to say as well. We did 2 Twitter polls. So by the way, always keep an eye on our Twitter because we want to start doing that more. So the first one was, are you interested in or would you use the metaverse? And we had 13 votes. 69.2% said no. 30.8% said not sure. 0% said yes.
I feel like there's a bias there though. Like the sample size is not big enough. Not to discount the 13 people who voted. Thank you for voting. I'm just saying, if maybe it was like 100, 200 people, at least a couple would have said yes, right? Like maybe out of curiosity, maybe early adopters, that kind of thing. But I think most people don't, me included, most people don't understand the concept of the metaverse. The only thing I do understand is, those VR goggles, the Oculus goggles or the PlayStation VR, whatever VR you use. I guess part of that is the metaverse, right? Like currently you turn on your PS3 or 5 or whatever you're on nowadays. I'm a little behind, on the times. When you turn it on, you got like this, whole screen and like, what is it called? Like what's the screen called, man? I'm getting old.
Like like the menu, the home screen.
Yeah, like the home screen, you can like kind of go through it and everything. I'm guessing, is that, I know you've tried VR. Is that kind of how VR is? Like, and then you immerse in it, you play games, you can, I don't know, play Operation on it or something. I've not tried.
Yeah. I mean, so there's different things. So there's some modes if you're literally looking at a screen, or you can watch a movie. So you're like, it's just a screen that's there, but because you're in a headset, the screen looks really large. It's like simulating like a theater experience. I personally didn't really do a lot of that. It kind of made me a little motion sick the way that it was. But the games and stuff are very immersive. I love like Beat Saber and stuff. Like it really, I think VR is super cool when done right, to make you really add a new layer of immersion to things that would not be capable of otherwise. So in terms of gaming applications, I think there's some really cool stuff with VR. I'm actually looking forward to the PlayStation VR 2 later this year as well. But I'm also very curious about augmented reality and where that can go in the future, because that doesn't require you to like fully, like when I have the headset on in the past, I've had Maheen run up to me and scare me while I'm in this thing, and I didn't even know, because you're fully into it, right? That level of immersion it's a little much sometimes, so like I want to like, I like the real world, but it's cool to augmented reality, maybe layer on some additional things, that could be interesting.
There are videos of people like breaking stuff because they're like
in
VR mode, and they're like, and then like they throw the nunchuck at their screen or something because the zombies popping out. It's pretty funny. Like some of the videos are really stupid out there. And really funny. So that's con. You break stuff apparently because it's hyper realistic, which we're at what, 4K or 8K now, and eventually there's talks that virtual reality will be indistinguishable from reality because of the pixels and all the stuff and holograms and whatnot. That sounds scary.
That will be interesting. So the other question that kind of ties into it as well that we asked was, what area of the metaverse are you most interested in? So 16.7% said social experience, 66.7% said gaming, 16.7% immersive learning, and 0% digital collectibles. Now, to be fair, we only had 6 votes, so not really a statistically, a sound sample size there. But it seems like the folks that responded lean more towards, the gaming side of exploring, what the metaverse is, I guess.
Yeah. I wanted to just mention one other thing. Out of the metaverse, VR versus AR, I think I personally approve more of AR than VR. Again, full immersion versus partial immersion. Again, AR I think can be used. Like, would you consider Google Glass
That's
AR? AR, right? Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Like, I personally think that might be okay. Like currently we look at our phones, when we are navigating, and we look down and we're like, okay, well, we got to turn right or turn left or whatever, or in our cars or whatever. I think to some degree it would be helpful. And I think it's coming. I just don't know how soon. Like, imagine you're driving or the car's driving you, it's self-driving car. And instead of having like a screen there, it's on your window, windshield.
There is some preliminary tech I've seen. I actually was kind of looking into it once too. I was like, that'd be kind of neat, but it's still early stages, not super great. But so, I think that's.
I think that would be interesting, as long as that's not like, and obviously these companies want to push, more products and sell and whatever, but I think my concern, I've mentioned this before during this podcast, but my concern is like, that's a stepping stone into being fully plugged in all the time. I don't like that idea. I think human beings are meant to be human beings, and becoming technologically immersed in that way can become harmful, I think.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah,
don't know.
interesting. I think you know, definitely some different levels of kind of immersion and what can lead to the metaverse. The only example when I think the metaverse, again, I'm kind of in the same boat of very skeptical, not really sure of, how good it would be, not really super interested in it. But the one use case or one thing where I guess technically is the metaverse, would be an example of sometimes what Fortnite does. And I don't mean like the normal battle royale game that you play, but Fortnite, for example, has held concerts, like live concerts in game. And so you are logging into this
Fortnite, yeah.
platform, you have a digital avatar, your character, and there's a live event happening that you're sharing this experience with a group of folks. You can voice chat with your friends, that sort of thing. And it's a shared online virtual experience, which technically fits the definition of the metaverse, right?
And you get an NFT for attending.
Well, I don't know about that, but
It's true though.
well, it's not. It's not.
They're like,
True,
come
but
to our concert. Justin Bieber is giving away free candy on the digital world. It's like a hologram of his shoe or something. I don't know. It's like, okay.
well, yes and no, but
I'm just being facetious. Sorry, guys.
but the but I like that concept. Like I've had a lot of fun in that type of a shared experience because that's something that you can't easily do in real life. Like if going to a concert, requires probably a lot more money, travel to meet up with people, do that sort of thing. And they can do things where they can like make you, experience these different worlds they've created and stuff. So that's one example potentially of where I could see the metaverse being interesting, but otherwise, um, skeptical. Joel in the chat just says, I won't say yes or no because I'm not fully educated on it. It's confusing to me. I
Yeah.
think it's confusing to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's unclear. It's very ambiguous what that's going to be so far, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, we have VR and AR, but I don't know. If the metaverse takes off, then there's talks of, like, how you have an identity in the physical world. There are talks of, people needing at some point, depending on what, which way this whole thing goes, having digital identities. I don't know if that's a comforting idea or not. That's up for debate. But yeah. Also, he mentioned a movie called Pixel Perfect. Have you seen it?
I can't remember actually. I know. I don't think I have. I wanted to see it because it's a video game. Like it's like the one thing I remember from the trailer is Pac-Man comes to the real world, I think, and is like destroying buildings or something. I don't know. He's like eating buildings. I think that's right. Oh no, okay. I'm thinking of something
This is
else.
a Disney movie. It
Channel
looks
movie.
like.
Oh, I'm thinking of Pixels, I think, but Pixel Perfect is oh, okay.
It
I
says
think I do remember.
on IMDb, it says a teen uses a holograph to create a pop star for his friend's band. Sounds very Disney.
Yeah.
Samantha's band, the Zeta Bites, is meeting with little success. So our friend Roscoe uses his knowledge of technology designed by his father to create a holographic lead singer, Loretta Modern. The band instantly becomes successful, but Samantha begins to feel alienated. Roscoe discovers feelings for Samantha, and Loretta struggles with individuality. There's a metaverse in a nutshell.
I think that's an old movie too, so interesting that they're
It is.
exploring,
It's from 2004. No, I haven't watched it either, but maybe I'll check it out.
I think I've seen it. Yeah.
So, shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah. Let's do it.
And did you cover VR AR for healthcare? That was something I think
we kind of sprinkled it throughout and talked about different use cases, but I think that's where there's some we talked about the I mean robots are also done with oftentimes some type of a VR headset experience.
Very briefly, and I mean very briefly, do you want to share your thoughts on digital collectibles?
Trash. Okay, let's no. I don't know how much or not.
Or NFTs in general, but NFTs have more applications than that. But I just want to hear your thoughts because I know it's a controversial thing for you. So
Um, yeah, I think let's see, where do I begin? How do I sum this up? I'm a collector, right? I like to collect things. If people don't know me, I have a lot of things that accumulate, and it's a hobby, right? And NFTs, the way, speaking in the digital collectible, realm as well, the way that they tend to be promoted is more, it's you're buying things or purchasing things for the sake of collecting, but not for the actual value or experience of what the item itself that you're collecting is, right? It's promoting the idea of collecting or purchasing things and ownership of things, when really, as collectors, what is important is the value or the feeling or the meaning that the things that you collect have, right? And I don't like that side of the focus on that. It also, there's a lot of cases of a lot of artists that have had artwork stolen, and it's not regulated frequently at
yet
all. There's a lot of, well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of environmental concerns, all sorts of things,
for
but
NFTs,
yes, um,
really?
uh, yes, yes,
Ah,
absolutely. There's been a few cases of even some like game developers that have started to, or tried to incorporate NFTs. In some cases, they're still pushing forward. In some cases, the backlash they received, they decided to abandon that. I think it's a money grab right now, and people are trying to exploit folks for that, and I just don't like what
but
it is.
there's I just no, I hear you. Two things come to mind, and again, I promise I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but it's going to sound like devil's advocate.
Yeah,
Um,
let's have the discussion. Yeah.
and I know we want to move on too because we're an hour in now into our discussion, but one thing I do want to mention is maybe somebody like how when we were growing up, there were like Pokemon cards and other cards and whatnot, and our parents were like, "What are you collecting cards for? It's a piece of paper." Like, in the next generation, maybe they will have a thought or an idea of valuing that virtual thing, whatever it is that they're collecting, because it
But
is
yeah,
virtual and it does something cool. I don't know, whatever. Again, I don't, from our generation, it's probably harder to understand that. Just like our parents' generation, they were like, "Oh, what are you doing with a card?" Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like possibly maybe a generational thing.
I mean,
Could
it
be.
depends. It's hard to predict how things will evolve and be adapted. But with an NFT, you don't actually, you're owning more. It's more like you own a receipt for something, right? You don't actually truly. There's no like physical, like it's not actually, So in that use case of people collecting things, I mean, you're not actually truly collecting something. If it's there is no actual thing tied to it. It's really just receipts of things that you can digitally say, oh, I have this thing, but you don't, and you don't necessarily need NFTs to do that. If they want to create a system where you can collect stuff or whatever, it doesn't have to be based on NFTs. But that's kind of,
I know initially when NFTs came out, people were like, "This is just a GIF image of something. I can, like, why do I need to own it? I can just,
yeah. So I
I
actually
can just see your
accidentally
picture
do.
of it, and I
I
can just
actually
enjoy
own
it
an
that way."
NFT or a couple, because I didn't realize it. Actually, Pentatonics released these digital collectibles, like these little coins or something, through this app, and I purchased them. Like, oh, this digital thing, it's a Pentatonics thing, whatever. And then later, I came to realize like what this thing is. But I remember as soon as I purchased it through this app, I got like tons and tons of these requests to trade for these coins through this app. I had to like turn off all my notifications and everything. I'm like, the second I purchased it, all of a sudden I got like hundreds of messages of, I'll trade you this for that or trade that. I'm like, whoa, chill. I just bought this digital collectible coin. And it was like everybody wanted to own this thing. And that like really kind of turned me off as well from that
I don't know.
experience.
Again, maybe I'll be the first one to say maybe I don't understand, and I don't mean to make this sound ignorant or whatever, but to a degree, it sounds like the cards just in a virtual world. Like you don't do it physically, you just do it virtually. But then again, I wasn't into that
But you don't need
personally, and I'm
NFTs to
not
do
really.
that though. Like the concept people bring of NFTs, like you could develop a system or have something that has you can collectibles and some company could create something where it doesn't have to be based on because there's other issues with NFTs. Again, there's people like that actually are creating collectible card things, but they have a lot of stolen artwork that has
I
been
mean,
used for that too.
One of Banksy's art pieces was destroyed and made into an NFT and sold on the virtual web, right? You know
I
who Banksy
don't
is, right?
sounds familiar, but I'm not
He
super familiar with
he's
it.
like he's an artist that makes political statements with his artwork,
Gotcha.
or like tries to raise awareness of certain political issues and whatnot. But um, yeah, and his art is like really valued and whatnot because of that, and
Yeah.
it upsets people, and then it riles up other people. It charges people up in some ways. Um, but the last thing I will say, I think maybe NFTs do have, uh, not in this like collectible kind of way, but like there's talks of having, like, if you're a homeowner and you want to settle the title and receive that or whatever, you could do it through cryptocurrencies, which is actually our next topic. You could do it through cryptocurrencies and whatnot, and get an NFT of that house, that proves you're like that you're the owner of that house, or get like a NFT degree that you have officially received a diploma. Which actually, I was in grad school last year, and I got both a physical copy of my diploma, which is on my wall up here, and then I got offered for an extra $10 to have like a digital one. And I bought it. I was like, okay, I can link it to my LinkedIn, which I did, I think. But yeah, so like that could also be hypothetically an application for NFTs, that you would only be given one diploma and anybody can go online on a decentralized platform, like, digital currency like Ethereum or whatever platforms out there. I don't fully understand this yet either, and check and make sure that you actually have a diploma, or you actually own a home, or you actually have this, whatever. Uh, Again, it's a tough sell still, because we still live in this world, but it seems like there are talks of that to a degree.
I guess we'll see. But I'll
Yeah,
refuse to comment any further on
no,
NFTs.
that's fine. And I'm not, I don't want to say I'm one way or another. I'm just saying, it's out there. That's what they're talking about. That's what things are being talked about. So we can have maybe we need to do a part 2 of emerging technologies at some point. Um, but speaking of digital currencies, and this will be the last topic, I know we're over our hour, so um, let's see. I just want to pull up, what is a digital currency. It's basically it's defined as a form of currency that is available only in digital or electronic form. It's also called digital money, electronic currency, or cyber cash. And typically digital currencies don't require intermediaries and are often the cheapest method for trading currencies. Advantages, disadvantages: transaction costs are cheaper, seamless transfers, stuff like that. So, Hassan, your thoughts on digital currencies? I mean, this is a very broad view of it, right? But
Yeah, I mean, I think like in some ways, things like I think we had in pre-discussion we talked about like even the use of like Apple Pay or what is it, Google Pay or whatever they or Samsung Pay. They all have different things that you can do. It's a digital way to pay that's connected to your bank account, that sort of thing. Provides additional convenience. They have digital credit cards now, that sort of thing. um
we have virtual ones, yeah.
yeah. Like Apple even has their own card. I don't have whatever other companies have that stuff too, or they have like digital wallets where you can like combine multiple cards into one, from different companies and just kind of do that.
Oh
I think
yeah.
like that concept or that use case, I like, and I think in general, I mean, obviously there's always, you know, holes in security and all that kind of stuff. But in general, compared to existing, physical credit cards, they are more safe and secure, especially from, folks that can, what are those things called? You can put on like credit card machines and like steal information of people that swipe, like the, um, uh, I forget what they're called, but there are things that, people that have, maliciously installed things on devices. Like you go to a gas station, especially back in the day when you'd swipe your card, it'd be there, you swipe and your information's getting stolen right there, right? So in some ways these things,
like digital readers or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, they're like credit card readers, hackers, whatever they are. But in some ways, your data is now sent through different encrypted methods and is a little more secure. Now, again, nothing's ever perfect, right? But the convenience as well. I use, like the Apple Pay stuff all the time. I mean, I think like that area, I think is cool. I personally am not in favor currently of a lot of what's being done with cryptocurrencies and that sort of thing, at least in the sense of, we can probably talk into like centralized versus decentralized, right? Like, if we were to talk more centralization, I think I would be much more intrigued or kind of curious to explore something like that. Decentralized methods, not really what I am interested in personally.
Why not? That's where I differ from you, but yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been lots of cases I've read of things where people have put in, their money into these different types of, bitcoins or different, or whatever the term, different cryptocurrencies, right? But and that's been taken away from them by somebody that started this whole thing, and they're out of their money and they can't.
There are plenty of cases of that happening in the centralized world as well. Just saying.
True. I mean, I'm not saying, again, neither system is perfect, right? But I've heard far less of that experience, or at least there's some sort of entity there that for me gives me the comfort in knowing it's backed by, like when I get a credit card from someone, I like, these are established entities that I, and many people have comfort in utilizing, right? Versus all these different cryptocurrencies that keep popping up. And again, there's also environmental concerns. I know over time that's changing, but at least currently and for the medium term,
totally about to play devil's advocate on you.
I mean, that's fine, but lots of different issues that I have with the current state of all that. So that's where I stand.
I think decentralization is much needed. Is it where it needs to be? No, for sure. Is it safe? I don't know. I personally think safety is an illusion, right? To a degree, yes, you need regulations and whatnot, which is great. But I was reading, I think I can't remember who had published it, but apparently the US Treasury recently said that they saw an uptick in crypto illicit finance, but fiat is still like, largely used for that fiat money, which is a centralized system. Again, I'm not saying, we don't need a centralized system, but I think maybe we need both. I think companies like Google, Samsung, and Apple are, they're centralized. They're created for profit. They seemingly say that they have the customer's best interest at heart, but at the end of the day, they're about making money, right? So how do you know that our data is not being shared? And that's a concern, or privacy. That's a concern with centralized entities. So one way that it could be addressed is through decentralization.
But isn't privacy also a concern with decent? Like, how do you know those?
Sure, to an extent it is, and again, I'm no expert in crypto and decentralization. I don't claim to be, and I'm not giving any financial advice or anything. But what it does, it takes away that power from one entity and spreads it about, right, in smaller ways. I mean, that's what decentralization is, at least to my understanding. Again, my understanding is very little at this point, you know, but yeah, I think I think there will have to come a day when centralized and decentralized currencies or digital assets or whatever systems will have to coexist. And maybe one day, eventually down the road, it might be, you know, more decentralized as the world becomes, and you know, let's be honest, we all know we're slowly headed there as the world becomes more like of like, you know, nation states seem to be going a certain way and the world seems to be becoming smaller in terms of perspective. So I don't know what I'm saying here is making sense or not, but I think, yeah, I think both need to exist side by side at some point. And I think regulation is needed. You know, there are rules needed in terms of the centralized world, and I think you're right, there's a lot of scam projects out there that are stealing people's money, but there are, I would say, very few, maybe a handful of cryptocurrencies that are decentralized, that are game changers, supposedly, that will come in handy and very beneficial in the future. But I also think, you know, central bank digital currencies, which, you know, the US is talking about, there was an executive order recently where the president had said that, you know, he wants the US to look into that in terms of, you know, central bank digital currencies. I know China has a digital I can't pronounce that word, renminbi, right? Like I was saying to you earlier before the podcast, there's a digital currency in parts of the Caribbean, if I remember correctly. I can't remember where. Parts of, you know, some countries in Africa are exploring that, and a lot of countries are essentially exploring digital currency. So it's going to be an interesting thing. I think the older generation, like my parents, my grandparents, they still prefer cold hard cash. So it'll be a tough sell for them, I think. For I think our generation, you know, we're used to swiping and whatnot. So it'll be interesting how this whole thing pans out. I think there'll be a lot of education needed, a lot of building privacy and safety, and, you know, taking these concerns into consideration. So it'll be interesting. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I think, yeah, like with a lot of these technologies, as you said, things will continue to evolve and change. I think we can only currently evaluate what's out there and what's, you know, what's available, but interesting to see what may come down the road. And
I think it will, you know, when I think of digital currencies, one thing is for sure. Like you remember like going to airports and exchanging currencies?
Mm-hmm.
Like you won't need to do that anymore. You'll just be like, oh yeah, okay, all right, yeah, I have dollars. I want to switch it to Indian rupees. Bam, done.
Well, I mean, yeah, in some technical, in some ways, you think of like a PayPal. Like I buy things on Japanese websites, and it auto converts the currency and all that, right? So I mean, in some ways, that just digital conversion of things is only going to spread or be more accessible in different ways, right? I mean, I think
there's also, you know, if like a digital dollar or digital currencies exist on a more governmental level, right, it would also make it easier. Then again, there are privacy concerns, obviously, but it would make it easier. You remember during the pandemic, we all got like a couple $100 checks, or, you know, yeah, I don't know, it was like $400 checks or something like that. I forgot the price, but yeah, everybody who was, you know, a US citizen was eligible for this and that and the other. And we had to wait, you know, some of us had direct deposit set up, so it was there quickly. And then others had to wait for checks and whatnot. If a system, like a digital system, was in place, that could be instant. So like one application could be, you know, sending people that are in the path of a hurricane money for like aid, you know, so that they can prepare and buy food and water or whatever it is that they need. You know, there are pros and cons, but then the fact that you can monitor every transaction, what they spend their money on, you know, what they don't, and all that, that's a concern. So pros and cons. And I'll just end my rant with that.
lots of interesting discussions. And I think, yeah, I mean, this is a topic that's always ongoing. Emerging technologies, there's always, yeah, and we just covered a couple, branches of emerging technologies, right? There's so much more in it. So if folks are interested in us talking about various other types of, emerging technologies or other things, or if you have other thoughts, I mean, I think, I don't know about you, but that'd be um, interesting to explore in other ways down the road as well.
Yeah, I think we should definitely do a part 2 of this emerging technologies, and think about some other things. Did you want to address any comments in the comment box before
Um,
we?
Popping in here. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the comments were on previous things that we'd sort of discussed. But thank you to everybody that hopped in the chat, to Manib, Joel, Maheen. Thank you all for all your comments. It was some lively discussions in there this time, which was really cool to see. We appreciate that. And yeah, make sure, for those watching, listening later, comment and share your thoughts via social media with us as well. We'd love to hear what you have to say. So, either here on YouTube, on Twitter at the Dose of Desi, or via email at the Dose of Desi pod@gmail.com. Check that out.
Yeah. Really quick, Maheen was saying there's a Japanese singer that's a hologram that has teal colored ponytails in each side of her head. Who who is that?
Oh, Hatsune Miku, I think she's talking about.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. Anyway, yeah, like Hassan said, thank you to those of you who participated, Maheen, Munib, and Joel. Thank you for, joining. I think 2 of you for sure have been consistent in many of our podcasts. So definitely want to give a shout out and say thank you for joining us. I think we are considering having some more guests on in the near future. So keep an eye out, like he said, like Hassan said, on our Twitter and, our polls. Keep an eye out on social media for our episode notifications. And thank you once again. Hope you enjoyed this. And if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, please do let us know, so we can take that into consideration for our next Emerging Technologies podcast. Take care and see you next time.
Bye.